Facebook now. We're getting stuff up. Hopefully someone will be joining us as we sing come, 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 come. Well, yeah. Come to the First Church of Permaculture. Today we're going to do a slightly different song here for the holiday, but I thought I'd sing for y'all anyway. Hopefully you don't mind too much there, Sandy. Oh, good. Lovely. Well, maybe. Oh, chestnuts roasting on an open fire. Jack Frost nipping at your nose. Yuletide carols being sung by a choir, and folks dressed up like Eskimos. Everybody knows a turkey and some mistletoe help to make the season bright. Tiny tots with their hearts all aglow will find it hard to sleep tonight. They know that Santa's on his way. He's loaded lots of toys and goodies on his sleigh, and every mother's child is gonna spy to see if reindeer really know how to fly. And so I'm offering this simple phrase to kids from 1 to 92. Although it's been said many times, many ways, Merry Christmas to you. Although it's been said many times, many ways, Merry Christmas to you. Well, thank you for coming to the First Church of Permaculture, Sandy, and whoever else out there ends up joining or seeing this later. How you doing, Sandy?
A nice little bit of nostalgia. Just made me think of them on Christmas Eve, It was a good song.
Yeah. Now, today I want to talk about a principle that we've kind of developed in the Transformative Adventures community over a decade and a half or so of doing PDCs that I've ended up kind of calling the super principle. And I know Sandy's kind of checking out Growing Free at the moment. And that principle is a major feature of that book. So it's kind of one of the big parts of it. And the super principle is really just about building connection. And to me, that song is kind of like, music in general, right? Is when at its best kind of all about building connection between us, right? So I like that you mentioned that, and it brought up memories for you probably of connection to family.
Yeah, all the times I've heard it, it made me think of my grandmother. And when my kids were small, it made me think of all the different versions you hear. If I even think for 30 seconds, oh, probably 3 seconds, I can see myself as a little girl sitting at grandma's in her living room with her little tree. That's
Yeah.
a connection, I suppose, huh?
Yeah, yeah, I think it is. Something about that whole idea of connection too is really about connecting with ourselves in an important way. It's
Mhm.
yeah. So this super principle is really kind of interesting to me because it came out of uh, years of kind of doing the same exercise, which is processing the permaculture principles. And for anybody who doesn't know, there are two sets of permaculture principles, really. Bill Mollison put together the first set of permaculture principles in the Permaculture Designer's Manual. And these were really focused on looking at the field of ecological design and things that other people had come up with. And he kind of put them all together and they're really focused on ecological principles and on landscape design and farming and all of that. So in a way, those are really practical principles. So for anyone who wants a set of design principles because they're really like doing their landscape and they want to really think about that, then using those principles can be really great way to help us design a landscape. Then later, David Holmgren kind of refined them and came up with his own set of principles. And these he kind of did to simplify and make the principles more accessible. And so, as just like a really good summary set of principles, those are kind of the go to. And most teachers end up using those because they're just a really simple way of thinking about them. So, to help people process, to me, pedagogically, the way you really learn things is to kind of play with them. And so in my PDCs, one of the exercises that I would end up doing over a long period of time, over like a decade and a half, was having people play with the principles. And there's been a long trend of trying to add new principles to it. And so we have this like never ending growing list of principles. And I thought, well, if I were to add a principle of my own, it would be to solve problems by moving towards simplicity, by simplifying things instead of further complicating things. So instead of adding a new principle of my own, I challenge my students to how can we reduce these principles? Can we boil these down into a simpler essence? Um, so that was kind of a design exercise. And over time, these things kept coming up. Um, and I believe it was Joanna Macy who came up with a sort of principle for her work, the principle or the work that reconnects. And what we saw happening over and over again with all these permaculture principles is that people were boiling them down in one way or another to being about reconnecting to nature and community. Just leaving a little space there in case you have thoughts about that, Sandy.
Well, I've actually run across the work that reconnects thing before, I think through Louie McNamara. She mentioned it somewhere. And now I'm remembering thinking, oh, I meant to look into exactly what that's all about. But so
Yeah.
I wrote it down this time.
Yeah. And it really seems that a lot of people are thinking along those same lines. In Growing Free, there's a big section on the economic situation that we find ourselves in because a lot of our problems are related to the economy, and really. what that all boils down to is both colonialism and kind of corporate capitalism, and kind of the way they work is breaking connections, right? So that, when in the days of colonialism, would have like which is really where corporations came from, right? The Dutch East India Company and all those corporations really were kind of like implements of war, of
Yes,
right,
yes,
and that's the
they were the
history.
instruments to enforce capitalism.
Right. And really to extract labor and value and resources from people. And the way that that worked was breaking down their traditional connections so that the company could impose itself in all those relationships. Instead of having people in a village make their own salt and make their own bread and make their own clothes and interact with each other and meet their needs that way, they really even the British made making salt illegal, famously, and so Gandhi, had a big protest. One of Gandhi's major protests was going to the ocean, reconnecting with their original source of salt, and making salt together and bringing it back to their villages. So that's an idea where the opposite of this of kind of the corporate capitalist and colonial direction was reconnecting to each other and to the source in nature. And so maybe Gandhi is the original source of reconnection. Um, so yeah, and it's really that way with almost anything. All the needs that we used to get from each other, from our families, from our communities, and from our ecosystems, the whole idea is to break those, sometimes make them illegal, so that that energy transaction can be kind of harvested to make, you know, to make rich people richer. So in a way, this gives us a direction that may have been lacking from the permaculture ethics and principles otherwise. Um, if we can always kind of come back and think about, is this action, is what I'm doing, is this something that is building connections between me and my community and nature, or am I helping to erode those and break those? So it adds a whole different level in a way to our permaculture process and to the action that we're trying to do together. Because what we're trying to do together from this perspective is build these connections. So I'd kind of like to, this thought was kind of started by someone asking a really great question. They were asking about what permaculture people think about about finding alternative, sustainable products, and that can be kind of a complicated thing because I think we want to be sustainable, right? We want to support those in some ways, if we're talking about like seventh generation dish detergent and laundry detergent, that would be an example. Or maybe vinyl windows, vinyl replacement energy efficient windows, things like that. So how does the super principle of investing in connection to nature and community, how does that inform our decision to buy, like laundry detergent products? Sandy, do you have thoughts about that?
Well, yes, not so much about laundry detergent, but I'm still having and hawing around with buying a kitchen floor. And we talked about this before, maybe you remember, I don't know. When we talked about ceramic, it's pushing me to go with this luxury vinyl plank. And when I say everybody, I mean, like all my friends who are kind of status conscious and my kids, and because it's easy to take care of, which that is a big consideration. So, yeah, that's a question of, is that going to grow or destroy stuff I want to support and connections? I'm thinking of plastic floors, maybe not the greatest thing in the world, but it certainly would be easy to take care of.
Yeah. Um, And that's a great example, isn't it? A lot of these things do come with trade-offs because these systems that have evolved really do solve some problems, right? A lot of times they
Hmm.
can be less maintenance or whatever.
Well,
But
and the floor I have is in horrible condition because it's a laminate floor in the kitchen and it's a cheap, junky laminate floor. So it's really in wrecked condition. And so now it's maybe, I don't know how old it is. It doesn't seem very old. It was beautiful when we moved in, of course, which was less than 4 years ago. But they did not have kids. And I don't think she did a whole lot of cooking. It was two people, you know. I have a completely different situation than that. And I have six cats. So the floor takes a beating. And now the floor has to be replaced. And that is a huge waste.
yeah, yeah. Well,
So if
let's
I got the floor that lasted more, and it was less easily damaged, it would stay in place for way longer. So that's a consideration for me.
yeah.
Maybe that makes me feel better about even thinking about a plasticky floor, you know?
There's a saying in like the Old House Journal, Old House magazine, and stuff like that, that low maintenance usually means it cannot be maintained. So that's something else to consider when we're talking about things like vinyl floors or vinyl siding. They're no maintenance, which means they cannot be maintained. Those are products that are ultimately made for the landfill. In the short term, they may be easier to care for, but in the
Mm-hmm.
long term, we know where they're going. They're going to the landfill. Whereas some other more natural products, there are natural products that are honestly just as easy to maintain, and in some cases, not that much more expensive, but they can last a really long time. And then even when it's time to, someone wants to bulldoze them, those products can often be reclaimed. So I love that example that you brought up, and then we can make this a concrete discussion and actually apply this. But as an example,
It's waste.
I'd like to go back to this just idea of these like green products, of corporate green products. Because if we're only considering like the permaculture ethics, which are care for earth, care for people, and fair share, and we could evaluate these sorts of corporate products from those angles. We could say, this product is a greener product, seventh generation type product. They're advertising it as being green. Maybe they're investing in carbon offsets. Maybe they're fair trade. Maybe if it's something like bamboo floor, maybe it's labeled as fair trade, or maybe it's even goes as far as to be a union type project or product, or a co-op product. That's pretty rare in our
Mm.
economy. It's pretty rare. So we kind of can see levels there. And, that co op thing might also imply that it's fair share. So we could see something like that and say, okay, well, this corporate product, seventh generation or whatever, it reduces the harm I'm doing. It meets those permaculture ethics. Now, to me, that makes it good. It's good. Like I buy those things. When I have to make a choice about those sorts of things, I buy those sorts of things because it's harm reduction.
Mm-hmm.
But this super principle implies maybe I could take it in an even more positive direction. Because still, like if my goal is to invest in my community and invest in having this vibrant local economy and an ecosystem and a great place for myself to live, if I give that money to seventh generation, it takes my money out and it flies away to wherever that corporate structure is and to their board directors and to their major investors. And I also know that most of those companies, let's be honest, are making the money by exploiting labor and exploiting resources in ways that are not sustainable. So, although it's harm reduction, my opinion, my thinking is with the super principle that if instead I can find someone in my local region, at my own farmer's market, who's making and selling things like that laundry detergent or dish detergent. And these days, that's becoming more and more common. That's not entirely impossible to find, right? So if I can find someone locally to do that, I am building a connection. And a lot of times, those people are also connection conscious, and they're shopping at the farmers market when they go there, and that keeps, and a lot of times they're sourcing their ingredients from people locally too. So if I can make that choice, that's investing in connection to nature and community. And that's going to have a much more powerful impact than giving my money to seventh generation, right? So I think that's a powerful thing, and it really shows us a direction for, to me, the highest level of permaculture. Right? It's not just reducing our harm; it's investing in creating a whole new system of connections that we know we need. And to me, if you don't have a lot of time in your life and you don't feel like you can find every single product and make it be the best thing you can, right? We have limited time. I think that investing in one local connection like this is more powerful than like five or six, harm reduction corporate strategies and corporate products. Does that resonate, and does it potentially give you ideas for the flooring issue as well?
Well, it makes me think that I know if I used a flooring company, a local flooring company at the old house to do some other different flooring work, and they're more expensive, but the service is fabulous. The work they did was beautiful, and it was just a real super simple. And I was employing local people. I loved that. And the workers were all immigrants, and they were super nice and super really invested in wanting me to be happy with their work. I liked it, and I had a great experience with them. And I also felt like I was dealing with people who wanted me to be happy with the whole. Like the guys in the store wanted me to be happy with what I bought. They were happy to recommend the right thing for what I was looking for. So I'm thinking I might go over to that store and talk to them about different options that they know of and what they would recommend. And here's my priorities, and, see what they got to say. They've moved to a bigger store, which is heartening.
Yeah.
And probably they'll have more to show then, and more options. If they have more space, then they could carry more products.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a great example too. I think that those kinds of things too. And of course, they may be nothing is we don't have to have everything be perfect, right? So they may be sourcing products that are kind of corporate products or from further away or whatever. And they also may be able to help advise you in some slightly more local products. These days there are more or increasing options for things like ceramic tiles. And even keeping it in the regional economy is better than, sending the money to spending our money to like exploit labor and resources in China or wherever.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, yeah, I do think about tile, but a lot of people say, oh, you don't want tile. If it cracks, you got a problem, and everything you drop breaks. And you want that plastic stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I love tile. We put in a tile floor in the kitchen here, and I love doing tile, so that's another thing. And tile will a cool thing about tile is that it has an aesthetic that's very kind of wabi sabi, which is to say it ages well. Unlike a lot of plastic or vinyl products, the second they start to look flawed, they tend to look like garbage, right? They are made to be new and to look great new. Because tile is an organic thing, With wear, it gets more character, it becomes more beautiful, it can get kind of polished in beautiful ways. And there are tile floors in Europe that are like thousands of years old, and they're more beautiful
Yeah,
now.
you're right. I don't go to a church in Europe and look at the tile and think, God, what a pile of junk this heap is.
That's
When
that's
I go
right.
when I go to Europe and look at churches, I go, the beauty, the energy of holy people praying for centuries. Yes, I love those places.
So yeah, and
Yes,
a well-installed tile
and
floor probably.
tassels and
Yeah, and it probably will not crack or anything too. So I'm just saying, throwing that out there as
you're
something that's a
really turning me
long-term
toward
investment.
tile when you start talking like this
Well, and just to,
about how tile ages so beautifully.
yeah, another product that is like that that's a little bit surprising is linoleum. You know,
Oh,
and linoleum is actually an upscale product too. It's really nice. There are types of linoleum tiles that that also have an aesthetic that will age really beautifully over a long period of time. And of course, it comes from linseed oil, so it comes directly from an ecosystem. It's sustainably grown, and it's one of the most durable long-term products that we know of too, and has a very low energy cost. And it doesn't
mhm.
off gas or anything like that, like vinyl does. So that's
Yeah.
another one, and there are some local sources too. It's usually a little bit more expensive, but not more expensive than the fancy plastic tiles,
Well,
and
I don't
they're
really care
biodegradable.
about that because if I only have to put it in once, okay. Where if well, I'm not going to live to have to do too many more floors, but that's okay.
Yeah,
After a while, you just stop caring about crap like that. And
yeah,
I'm getting to that point.
yeah.
I understand right now how when you go into an old person's house and everything's all junky and they couldn't care less. I'm getting to that point. I can see that.
Yeah. Well, I love this.
Oh,
I
but
love this discussion though because it shows too that something like permaculture isn't just about growing our own food, and it's not just about having a farm. It's not about that. We can build connections. We can invest in repairing these connections to nature and community with practically any choice we make. Whether when it's something
mhm.
like flooring or whether it's buying detergent, we have this opportunity to use that piece of our life to build a better world. And I think it builds a better life for us too. Like if when I go to the store and I choose seventh generation instead of Dawn, that might be a little bit better for the planet. But if I go to the farmer's market and have a conversation with someone who's making that product, I'm building a real connection to some place where I live, and it's something, or going to that flooring store, like you said, and meeting real
Mhm.
people in your community, investing in those people in your community so that they have more security, they have more opportunity to invest back in us. Those things don't just build a better world. I'm convinced that they build a better life for us too. Thumbs up on
I'm
that.
in agreement. I agree. You know what a people person I am. I, it's really important to me that I have a whole web of relationships everywhere, and some are real close relationships, and some are just friendly relationships. And that's very cool. I love going to a place where I haven't been for a while, and I remind them who I am, and they're like, "Happy to see me, yay!" That is a beautiful thing in life.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Preaching to the choir.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think we're preaching to the choir, the church choir here. Whoever has decided to join us, and whoever will watch this, it's going up on YouTube live right now, and we'll have these recordings. So we'll see.
Okay.
People will watch it, and hopefully they will embrace investing in connection. So you started reading this book, which is a lot about investing in connection in all these sorts of ways.
Yes. The book is fantastic. I am enjoying it very much. Last night we had no power for about 3.5 hours. Just went out of the blue. No weather, no nothing, no explanation. So we got out our little lanterns and we had to read. Ooh, hardship, right? All the kids left because there was no power and their devices wouldn't work because the book was dead. And him and I we just laid around reading our books. So we made quite good progress in the book last night. And it was good, and I'm enjoying it very much.
Oh, good. I'm glad. We
Yes.
enjoyed making it.
I actually posted about it on Mastodon this morning,
Oh, good.
and I'm loving Mastodon.
Yeah.
It's very different than others because there's no ads and there's no algorithms, So it's just people, they post up and it comes right up and there it is. And there's nobody trying to get in between you and your other people. It's about relationships.
Huh. Well, I'll definitely have to check it out. I was
I put
unfamiliar
my
with
three
it.
good things. I listed my 3 good things from yesterday, one of which was laying around for 3 hours reading. And I told them what book. And then somebody posted back to me saying, "Oh, I'm having a hard time thinking of any good things. My life isn't so great." And I was like all over that. "Oh, honey, you are the descendant of 40,000 generations of badasses. You remember that when you feel down. It's all you can do." But she was crying for help, so I tried to help.
Yeah.
To a stranger somewhere in this Cornwall or somewhere.
Wow. Well, that's wonderful. Yeah, we communicated about it too. Of course, I do a lot of stuff on Facebook, and and one of the reasons why, and here we're having this conversation, and it's coming back to this super principle again, is this whole idea of increasing connection instead of decreasing it. So Lawrence Lessig, I think he ran for president at one point and he started the it's the Electronic Freedom, the EFF, the Electronic Freedom Foundation, which does amazing work. It's like permaculture for your computer.
Yeah.
It's
I've never even heard of it.
oh, it's great stuff. They do great stuff. And so he's a really interesting kind of modern philosopher, and he's talked a lot about social media. And this idea of reconnection versus breaking connection. And he said, as I understood it, I want to put words in his mouth, that in the earlier days of the internet, everything was open like that. It was all about people connecting with each other in a new way that has never been done before. And over time, the whole idea of social media has been to, before that we had TV and radio, and those were very one-directional forms of communication. I'm the expert, I own the airwaves, I talk at you, you listen. And that's a very profitable form of interaction. It benefits me more than it benefits the people who are listening out there. And so it was a revolution in communications technology when we had the internet, and it became omnidirectional, it became multi-directional. It was amazing. And now the push is to make it more like TV and radio again, because that's just more profitable. It's breaking connection.
It's been corporatized.
Exactly. And that's just like we were saying.
Eaten up by corporations.
Right. And it's just like we were saying. It's breaking our connections to make profit. So to me, with all its faults, and there are many, Facebook, of the social media platforms that I have tried, is the most interactive, the most omnidirectional, and it's not just one direction. And that's why I like it. But it's got a lot of problems.
Yeah, it's certainly better than lots of other options, which I won't mention. You won't want to give that any air in the room. But I do like the other new one too. So,
So you feel like Mastodon is multi-directional in that kind of way and
oh
communicative,
gosh,
participatory?
yes, because there's no ads, there's no corporate anything. You can block anyone. There's really no control on what you say. Anybody who's following you sees, if they want to, everything. You can set up filters that you don't want to hear about the war, you don't want to hear about guns, whatever it is,
Wow.
You have total control, and you can put anything out there you want. Now, if you're obnoxious, they'll block you. People will ban you. The guy who owns your server will tell you to shut up and close your mouth for you. And then you can go to a new server
Huh.
and try to learn and try to behave. So yeah, I like it a lot. We'll
Wow.
see what happens.
Yeah, I will check it out. Oh, excuse me. I'll check it out. It's a good recommendation.
If you, well, it's early days, and I think there's a lot of room to reach a lot of people there who, would be interested, because it tends to attract, at this moment, people with open minds and people who see problems in the world and want to help fix them.
Yeah.
And problems like that you and I care about, not other kind of problems that people are making up in their heads. So real problems.
That other people want to love each other and get married and stuff like that. Kinds of problems some people worry
Whatever
about.
control freak nonsense the other side is all about. There's very little interest on Mastodon in talking about that kind of stuff. They want to talk about things that are going to make individual people's lives, human lives, better. So
Great.
everybody, not just the select chosen people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, all that I think ties back again to that to that super principle, our topic for today, which is that whole idea of building, of investing in investing in connection to community and nature and our ecosystems. One other thing that I started to talk about earlier on um, about this is that in a way that also implies connection to ourselves better. Because to really connect with other people, we have to become more authentic, right? You can't really build a connection with other people or with community unless you're finding ways to be like really radically authentic. I think that's beneficial for us too. In a way, that goal, saying that goal of connecting outwardly pushes us towards connecting in an inward way too. And that's another thing I really like about the super principle is that if you look at like the permaculture ethics or all the other principles, you can do them in a way like we were talking about. You could do them in a way that's actually kind of still destructive, right? If you only evaluate your shopping based on earth care, people care, and fair share, you could still be investing a lot or choose to invest in big corporate structures that ultimately exploit people and ecosystems and stuff like that. And also it's neutral for us personally. But if you do the work of reconnecting, there's no way that won't also build a better life for you and be a path of spiritual development too, where we're exploring and figuring out ourselves and figuring out how to be more authentic in our lives. So I feel really thankful to this process of teaching PDCs for a decade and a half that brought me to this, that kind of where we as a community co-created this super principle. That's another thing about it. It wasn't something that kind of like came from an author or one person. It's been a community processing thing over a decade and a half that has created this super principle. And I think there's a lot of wisdom in that. It was birthed by connection.
Well, interestingly, speaking of connecting with yourself, my church has been doing this thing called centering prayer, which is basically just quietly sitting meditation, we might call it. And so I go to these things because sitting quietly is good for my brain and good for many parts of us. And I do find that I'm more connected with myself, shall we say. And I also am more aware of my connections, like with nature, especially, and my neighbors. I just have a lot more patience and acceptance for people the way they are. The way they are, that's the key. It's very interesting.
Yeah, yeah, boy, it kind of shows how much our programming gets in the way of that connection and our kind of knee-jerk reactions. Once you sit there with yourself and try to be quiet and still, I've had a big practice with that for a long time too. And yeah, you sit there and you see, boy, I think some stupid mean stuff. Why do I do that? And as you learn to let go
Yeah.
of that sort of
And
thing, you're letting go of
everyone
those.
out there's doing the best they can
Yeah.
every day, even though it looks piss poor to me. It is the best they've got today. And
Yeah.
some of my days, I am a horror story. I mean, that's just the way life is.
Yeah.
Ask my kids.
Yeah. Isn't that the thing there too? So even this is a process of building connection when we make this choice to have a practice where we just sit for a while. I don't know that there are many things that we can do that are more beneficial to our lives than just sitting down and shutting up for a while and having to confront yourself. You sit there with yourself. That's reconnecting with yourself in a really special way. And it totally changes the way you connect with nature and everything.
My church has asked me if I would be interested in sort of facilitating, cats are sneezing, sorry, facilitating a walking meditation group. And I'm like, yeah,
Cool.
yes, I would be happy to do that. And I would do a meditation group like in the local nursing homes. I would do that too. I
Oh,
think that would be
wonderful.
fabulous.
That would. Hey, and if you don't mind me bringing this up in this context, we've talked before about some of your goals, like to reconnect with some sort of like fitness habit and activity,
Oh,
and
yeah.
with community, right? That's a big thing. So here
Yeah.
is a solution. You're solving a problem by building connections. And I love that. So you're following that super principle to its conclusion there, and I would love to see you do that. I think that's a beautiful thing.
I'm glad you pointed that out because that just completely
Oh,
escaped me because I was just so in the beauty of a walking meditation. I didn't really look at it from a whole bunch of different angles. I was just like, yeah, that would be really cool because I'd be outside quiet and with other people who wanted to do that same thing. And then we'd all just walk and it would be great. And the weather and the mist on my face and, all that nonsense. I'm very into my senses. So I was like, very like, oh, the wind would be in my. And I didn't even think about, gee, that'd be good for my body. Just, ooh, it feels so good. Nothing about the fitness. None so blind, as those who will not see.
oh, that's good. I'm just here because here we're talking about this connection thing today, and I thought I would build a connection to the connection
That
idea.
is another little strand of connection that has been pointed out to me because I don't think we're always very good at seeing connections that we're in the center of or that
Yeah.
we're on the edge of a connection we're involved in. Sometimes it just sort of escapes your notice
Well,
unless you're very well trained, self-trained at noticing them, and you are because you've been looking at this for a long time. I am still an apprentice at the knee of the master.
oh, it's a funny thing where so you've gone through this, kind of a partial one. We're not completely done, but
Mhm.
you've gone through a permaculture design process. And we talk a lot about visioning things and so a lot what I found in my life is that I'll have this kind of process and I'll come up with a vision for the kind of life that I want to build. And in a lot of ways, that's always just about connections, right? You can almost think about the kind of life you want to build as a mind map, right? You're like, I'm in the center, this is me,
Mhm.
this is my life. I want it connected to nature. I want it connected to a spiritual path. I want it connected to physical activity. I want it connected to this and that and that. So what we're really doing as we envision a life for ourselves is all about creating connection and envisioning connections. And just the thought of putting it in your mind that you want those connections, you start looking for them. And you might not notice it as it's happening, but then you get 3 years down the road and you look around and you go, whoa, it happened. I did it. I
Yes,
manifested
I
exactly
agree.
this thing.
I agree. I completely agree with that whole assessment. And I just wrote down mind map my life.
Yeah.
Because I think that is a great tool. I like the mind map thing, and I didn't really ever think about it as like a dreamy time tool of life design, because it is perfect for that, really. And you can always edit. I mean, you could put crazy stuff in there, and then if it's you just no, maybe that's too far out, then you just erase.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's real easy, and you can even just do it with a pen.
That's right. You don't need any special tools to do
You
that.
don't need any fancy software. You can do it with a pen and a bunch of pieces of paper taped together if that's all you got.
Yeah.
I do have something.
People ask me, what design software do you need for permaculture? What are the essential tools? Pencil and paper. I like colored pencils. That's an
Colored pencils
upgrade.
are fun too, but really, it's nice to have the information about the way your land slopes and that kind of thing.
It
That
is.
is a nice tool, and so maybe you want to print something out like that. But then after that, it's just drawing shapes, really, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
And moving things around and drawing it again, and then then you get on the real ground and it's all different anyway. That's my experience. You get on the ground and you think, yeah, I think I'm going to change that around.
Yeah.
That's
Well, oh no, if you have more to say, please do.
no, just that my plans are always very flexible.
Yeah.
I make a plan and then I go outside and then I think about it and look and I kind of traipse around, where I'm thinking, and then I'm like, oh, this is going to be better if I do it this other way.
I think that's what we have to do. I think there's a real value in doing a design process and actually thinking about things instead of just acting. It's a big thing. It's kind of the major insight of permaculture is, protracted thought and design over protracted labor. So it's all about the design. The design process is valuable. But then once you have done that work, you kind of let it then be easy about it. Let it go a little bit and just see where your instinct takes you, informed by that design. To me, that's the best way to do things.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, on that note, I always enjoy chatting with you. I'm so glad you joined, and I believe we will come back and do another one of these at the last Sunday, unless
That
that.
will be Christmas Day.
Oh, in that case, we'll probably skip that one.
Okay. That
I
was
think
on
I'm
my
going to
list
skip
of
that one.
things to ask you
Yeah.
was, are we doing a Christmas Day? And I have written down no, because I can read your mind.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
then at some point I will do my presentation.
Great.
But I would like to see a presentation or two first, because I really don't have a good handle on exactly what my presentation is supposed to be like. So
Okay.
when you get time, you could link me a thing or two so I know what to do.
That's a great thing to do in this live format. I know that there are going to be people who watch us, Sandy. We're going to be out there who listen to this and watch this. And it's a great reminder, yes, it's a great reminder that in the Permaculture in Action Transformative Adventures group, that's the name of the group on Facebook.
Our Facebook group,
That's on the Facebook group. Pinned to the top, there's an introduction thread, and it has a couple of recorded introduction classes. And I always
Oh,
have my students do their design presentation in introduction classes because it's just such a great way to introduce new people to permaculture. So if you're out there watching this and you'd like an introduction to permaculture, go check those out and you'll get to see a few people. I think there's a couple of different years, maybe like 3 or 4 linked on that same thread. And so if you want, you can kind of look through. If you are tired of listening to me, you can fast forward to the part where other people talk. And you
well,
can
it's
get
going to
those.
be very helpful.
Yeah.
It's going to be very helpful. So good. I don't really have any more questions. Thanks so much for your input on my floor. I think I am liking tile a whole lot more after talking to you. There is the aging thing and I like that.
Yeah.
So that was good. That was
Okay.
a good conversation from my perspective.
Oh, good. I'm glad.
Yes. And so that's cool.
All right.
And I thank you for your time and
Oh,
your expertise.
thank you for joining me and having this conversation for everybody who wants to eventually watch it.
All right. And I send my love to all my friends who watch this later or are watching on YouTube.
That's right. And as I always do, I'm going to say, as long as you live, live in love. Let nothing trouble you. Life is only too short, and time takes its toll. All right.
So
Bye.
can't wait.